It's time to begin. So again, I want to welcome everybody to Close Like a Pro, Design and Deliver Powerful Presentations. And let's begin. Well, I always like to start off with a question, as just many of you know, and that is, why is this important? This is a very important topic because life's full of presentations, and the focus, as we'll see, is really to help the audiences make decisions. The bad news is most of us have never learned presentation skills. We kind of learn it and wing it on our own, and maybe we're lucky, as I was in 8th grade, have a teacher give you about 2 minutes of advice on how to do it. And the bad news is most people prefer not to present as a reason. It's a shame that over 90% of all people are nervous about giving presentations. In fact, there was a study done many years ago called, a book rather, called I'd Rather Die Than Give a Speech. And it was a very interesting book because at that time I ran a company some of you may know called Brilliant Image. We had 5,000 clients worldwide who used our presentation graphic services. And when I saw that, I go, oh my God, no one's going to want to present. We should be in the mortuary business. Didn't make any sense. So I figured, let me read this book. And the good news was, A, nobody really wants to die. The bad news is 45% would rather have a cavity filled. Wow. If you're a Seinfeld fan, as I am, you probably remember there was one skit where he talked about the funeral situation, and he said, when you go to a graveside in a funeral and someone's asked to give the obituary, the eulogy rather, more people would rather be in the box than give the eulogy. So it's a common thing to be nervous when it comes to presenting. You shouldn't feel bad about it if you are. Barbara Streisand is. Everyone is for the first few seconds. Trick is how to overcome it, and that's our formula, teaching you how to do it. We call it ADAP, Audience-Driven Authentic Presentations. We'll actually be releasing our ebook on that toward the end of the summer, which puts together all the things we've been teaching you this year on how to do it. One of the reasons people are nervous is because they're self-conscious instead of focusing on the audience. We'll focus on that a lot. A second one is many people find that when they sat in presentations, they're just not exciting. In fact, there was a great study. It was a front page, actually, cover in the Wall Street Journal. And the article basically found that out of 200 large company vice presidents, over 80% found that the presentations were either putting them to sleep or boring. Almost nobody finds them stimulating. So when you think about that, and you say to yourself, if I sit in these presentations and I find them boring, why would I want to do that to someone else? So there's both the self-conscious and the self-concept is both about why we don't like to present. So I'm going to focus you on 5 ways of looking at how to present effectively, and we're going to deal with them. It's called substance, what's important now versus distractive clutter. Too many presentations include that. The structure, is it guiding the buyer to act? Is it engaging? Is the style question, because especially in today's time limit and attention span limitation world, it's got to be engaging. The setting, nobody presents in a vacuum. And so the question is, how does it affect impact? And finally, speaking. You as a presenter, what are you doing in terms of your voice, your body language, the passion you're communicating, your level of expertise that you have or demonstrating that's going to make a difference? And so if you master these 5, you will be a pro and you will close. And that's our goal. So let me go through today's agenda that I'm going to go through, 5 key points. First one is the concept of focus. Less is more. Leveraging graphics and visual metaphors. Organizing for impact. And delivering a winning presentation. Again, that last part, that's you. So let's go through the first part, focus. Actually, this is my favorite slide of all slides. The reason it's such a great slide is it makes a really interesting point. We have this archer who's got to choose what to do. If he's a typical multitasker, as most of us are, he's going to want to do 2, 3 things at one time. If he shoots for 2 of these targets, where's the arrow going to go? Right between them. He misses both. And that's the point about a presentation. There's only one goal that you can have. And if you want a bullseye, you focus in on that target. And in each presentation, whether it's sales or marketing or motivating an audience, be very clear what is the goal of that presentation. I work with sales teams all the time, and I explain to them if they're honest, do they really think on that very first presentation they're going to close the sale? And most of them say, no, it's a 3-4 part process, in which case, fine. Then what's the goal of each subpart to be able to produce it? So the most important thing is, before you do a presentation, ask, what's the goal? Second part is to understand that a presentation is like a book. It's got a lot of parts to it. And what you have to do is figure out, how do I organize it in a way to bring people from one section to the other? I like to joke a little bit and make the point of saying that one of the greatest of all presenters was God. God, if you think about it, presented to the Jewish people in the whole world, and we just went to a holiday where they identified this, you know, the concept of laws and commandments. But if you think about it, the 5 books of Moses are each different sections, okay? And when the 5 books, each one deals with one theme. So Genesis deals with the creation of the world. Exodus, what it's like in Egypt and leaving. The rest start dealing with law giving, the practices. And then finally there's a repetition at the end, Deuteronomy. So in each case, when you're presenting, you need to look at each section and say, what's the theme? We do a lot of presentations for clients. And so, for example, a typical one might be where we're saying, all right, let's give a 1-minute overview to really explain what it's about. Then from there, let's talk about the products and what benefits people receive from the products so that the audience understands why you might want to invest in this company. So think of you being an investor. So what do you offer? Yes, what are your products? Who's your typical customer? That's your next question. How do I know they really use it well? Let me share some success stories. Now, if you like this and you want to do it, what's the next implementation strategy? So it might be, in an investment point of view, what kind of options do I have to buy? Do I have a certain amount of money I have to spend? Do I have to buy debt? Do I have to buy stock? How does it work? If it's the software that I'm purchasing or a product that I'm purchasing, how do I implement it? What's the next thing? And do I feel comfortable about the people that are going to do that? And then finally, I really give you a conclusion. Now that you have it all together, these are the next steps. And you walk people through it. And that next step, walking through, is absolutely key, because that's the key to closing. Unfortunately, over 50% of all people forget to close. And I'm talking about salespeople, so always do that. Now, within this book, you have a number of chapters, if you think about it. Within a presentation, you've got a number of images within each section. And what you need to do, and this is hard for some people, especially the older timers, is to keep it to one idea per image. Again, if you try to put too many things on a slide, people are not sure what the most important point is. But since it doesn't cost extra to generate another image and have one read into the other, the suggestion is, to be powerful, is to have only one idea per image. You present your case, and then you communicate what your unique sales proposition is. What makes what you're saying special? Now, for those of you who sell, whether it's an idea, product, or service, and you know there's a competitor out there, always know your competitor well so that when you present it, you can counterpunch. What you've done is you've anticipated the competitor's arguments or the audience's objections, and you inoculate them. Take into account how they're going to think. I'm going to go to that later and give you a concrete example. The key thing is that you're not thinking about yourself. We talked about being nervous. It's not about the presenter. It's about the customer. And so you don't want to do a brain dump. This is our sales history. What you want to do is make the point. This is the best sales year ever. We've grown at a 20% cumulative annual growth rate. Okay? That's why you want to invest in our company. Now, to do that, you got to do your homework. So if you notice, the one on the left is a straight Excel spreadsheet that I've just dumped. The one on the right, I've changed the axis. It starts at 150 instead of 0. I've changed the title in there, and I've added the line to show what the trend is really looking like. That's the key to a great presentation, because you're focusing on what information you want the customer to walk away with, and you present it that way, they will succeed and get it. And finally, the fact is, again, in this time-limited world that we live in, people don't read everything. I read an enormous amount of stuff, newspapers, books, magazines, because I'm a teacher and I'm involved with lots of different things. And so the first thing you do is you skim titles. Is this interesting to me? So you need to do that in a presentation, because they're sitting there and it might be 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they've had a heavy lunch and they're tired and they've heard 3 other people speaking on your issue. Your titles are going to make the point I should pay attention or not. And there are many different ways of doing it. These are just 4 of them. The point is, you're engaging your audience to want to listen and want to hear. So let's put this all together then in the concept of focus. You have to focus everything, the entire presentation, on one goal. Each section is as part of that goal that brings you to the point. And then finally, each image drives one and only one point ahead. With that, we're ready to go to step 2. Less is more. You know, the bad news, in fact, last night in a presentation that I was doing with a group of people, I made this point. We all go to school, and in part, teachers, and I'm a teacher, so I know what it's like, reward students based on the amount of work they do. But the reality of life is in business, people expect you've done the work. They know that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be the professional at the level you're at. So what they want to do is just know, what do I need to know? Get rid of the clutter. What's important now? So the phrase, no one wants 1,000 words, is important because we always say the picture is worth 1,000 words. Not true. No one wants 1,000 words. No one's going to read 1,000 words. In fact, if anything, it turns them off. Remember, only over 84% of all people find presentations boring. You've got to get it down to the absolute basics, which means, sorry about that, folks, again, to be an excellent closer and a superb presenter, you got to do your homework. So you don't take a speech and write it all out and then take section by section and throw it on a slide in PowerPoint and produce a slide like this. Because when you do that, just imagine reading 20 of these slides. You'd probably be in Sonora City also. The alternative is to think through what's the key point and just write it down. So I'm going to help audiences understand by dealing with examples, reiteration, statistics, comparison, and testimony. Short, simple. Now, I can focus in on whatever I want. So this is a win-win-win situation. It's a win because you're going to pay attention and you're going to understand that there are 5 techniques for helping an audience understand. I'm going to win because there's less time that I need to write this and a lot less likelihood that I'm going to have a typo. But we both win because as I get to know my audience before I present, if I find you're lawyers, I might just realize that if I give you some testimony, that's going to clinch the case. But if you're a scientist, you probably want statistics. So I could focus in on what I want at that last minute, which I could never have done if I had just dumped my speech on a slide. Same thing about dumping words, you don't dump numbers. So here's a chart where I've put together all of the information, and we have it, and we've looked at it in terms of what we're trying to do here. Now, the fact of the matter is, while I've got it here, nobody really knows what I'm looking for because it's just a sales history. But what I really want to do is I want to make a point. Now, the beautiful part about statistics, there's a great book written in 1935 called How to Lie with Statistics, which actually is back in print. You can focus on whatever you want. So taking that same data that I just showed you, I can give you the analysis from a quarterly point of view. Now think about this. I'm Macy's, and if I'm Macy's, what I'm going to tell you is my fourth quarter is always the best. You can see that, right? And in fact, in 2013, next year, they're going to have a phenomenal fourth quarter, better than ever before. Makes the company look great. I'm really proud to tell the information. However, I could take the same numbers and not look at quarterly, but look at the annual sales, and uh-oh, I got a problem. 2011, my sales dropped to 2012, and even dropped more in 2013. So once again, the question becomes one of what's the point? Again, I can take the same numbers, just taking them in a different perspective and give you different information. Also, don't dump chart details. I sit with people with large organizational charts all the time like this, and they say, this is us, 4,875 workers in 25 countries and 16 different divisions. Well, that's the point. Bring it down to something I need to know. So, for example, I need to know what the main structure of the company is. It's a functional model, and that we work with different geographic regions, and in any given geographic region, the top guy is the managing director, and all customer sales support focus on helping that person. Break it into the meaningful pieces. Make it readable. And finally, I want you to keep in mind that it's not about the features. You know, we spend forever building products and services, and so what we do is we go through all of the different things. Think about a car. How many different parts are in the car, and all of the different qualities and attributes one could have on all the features in the car. And yet when you think about it, when people want to buy a car, they want to sell a car, what they're looking for is a simple question. What's in it for me? What's the benefit? Is this one going to give me great mileage? Is this one going to make me look good in front of my friends or good in front of the peers that I'm trying to impress? Is this one going to make my boss feel I'm terrific and think I'm a hero? So it's always, what's in it for me? Am I better, faster, cheaper than the alternatives? Will it make me a hero is really my point. And so you need to go from focusing on the features to explaining to people first the benefits. The ultimate less is more is the concept of a brand. Think about it. You look at the Nike logo, the swoosh, and it talks about top performance in sports, dedication. When you think about Coca-Cola, it's the joy of life. You think of Disney, okay? It's the joy of the experience that you're having at Disney World and everything like that. It's IBM. It's excellence in computing services. McDonald's, good food at a standard price and reliably. It's always, you can count on the same situation no matter what McDonald's you go to. Each of these brands, in nothing more than an image, communicates to you its value. That's the power of less is more. Now, many of you might be thinking, yeah, but I did all that work on the background, and I really need to present to somebody some of that information because some of them want to see it. We get this all the time, for example, with hedge funds and private equity firms, where what they want to do is sell why their philosophy works, and here's their rate of return, and it outdoes all the indices by 5 to 10 points. That's the basic investor presentation. But they now say, you know, we've invested in 27 companies, and the decision maker says to his colleague, which we call Seymour, I want you to see more details than I want to spend time on, and you tell me if really all 27 companies, or the majority of them, delivered the results the way the presenter said. So Vito, the very important top officer who's the buyer, needs the investor presentation. Seymour gets the reference one. By pulling out the features for him, you make it easier for the Vito, the important officer who's making the decision, to feel good and comfortable about you as a presenter and about the benefits of investing with you. And you also make it easy for them to have someone else who's got all the information they need to make the kind of decision you're looking for. So now we know two key things. We know, one, we have to focus on message and all the parts of it. Two, we have to put as little information in there that's details and boring and distractive clutter, focusing on the nuggets and the gems. Now we have to figure out a way to do it in a way that's interesting. So we have to leverage graphics and visual metaphors. Remember, we have right-brained and left-brained. Similarly, we deal with words and we deliver with pictures. Similarly, when we try to persuade people, we're dealing with logic and dealing with emotion. You as a presenter need to be audience-driven, taking a look at that audience and asking the question, what is it they need to see? What is it they need to hear? What is it they need to feel? What is it they need to understand both logically and emotionally that will drive the presentation home to them? And it's going to be different things in different places. But again, doing your homework makes the difference between a dump and a presentation that closes. Let me give you an example. The picture down the bottom, if you notice, is a crash. One of our clients many years ago was a training company that was training people as a service, training large pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, etc., where their entire sales force is on the road all the time visiting doctors, for example, to tell them about the newest drugs or the newest equipment that's going to be available. The insurance companies who insure the automobiles came up with a policy that if every 3 years they go through a safe driving test, company saves 10-15% on the insurance. Add that up, that's a lot of money. So every year they require all the people to do it. Now you can imagine yourself, how excited would you be if someone came up to you and said to you, wow, this is really fantastic. I can't imagine how great my day is going to be to sit in a presentation and learn all about safe driving. I've been driving 32 years. I've never had an accident. And so that's the setting that everybody walks into. So we were asked to come up with a way of presenting this to get people to want to pay attention instead of falling asleep right away. And in doing that, we discovered a couple of interesting facts in the presentation, and that is many of the accidents that occur have nothing to do with your ability to be a safe driver in normal situations. It's about the abnormal being prepared for them. It's knowing what to do in that case. So, for example, if you're driving down the road and there's a truck next to you, where do you position yourself? Front, middle, or end of where that truck is? Because if it jackknifes, you could be dead. So when people began to see that, or imagine you're driving and you're driving at 60 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour, and it's pouring outside, and you don't see right in front of you a whole lot of cars, so you think, well, I can go with the normal speed because I'm fine, and suddenly you see something and you want to hit the brake and immediately brake. Keep in mind that what's keeping you alive at that moment is the equivalent of 4 sheets of paper, because every tire is flat on the ground for about an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So the only thing that's keeping your 4,000-pound engine of potential death from hitting anybody is the traction those 4 sheets of paper worth of rubber on the road, which is wet, can produce. And so in this examples like that, suddenly people understood, wow, there's stuff I can learn that I never thought about, and that increased the impact that these programs were having significantly. So let's go through it. What are some of the rules to follow? One is use visuals. Many years ago, 3M did a study at Wharton. They asked 2 groups of people to listen to facts, to listen to a presentation, and they asked them to recall what they learned 72 hours later. What they discovered is the group that saw the same presentation with visuals remembered 5 times more information. So clearly, if the goal is recall, visuals make a difference. But what's also interesting is how people rated the presenter. Those presenters who use visuals were consistently rated as more professional, credible, interesting, etc. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, choosing the right visuals takes work, and matching them so that the eye and the ear see the same message is difficult. And so you really are better prepared, and you are more professional because you pulled it all together so it would work, and I think that's the reason why you get that impact. If you've got a product, show the product. It's amazing how many presentations I sit through where there's really never a show of the product that you're working with. If you have a concept, display the concept. So if a company has 27 offices worldwide, one of the things it can do, which is what many companies do, is they list all 27 office cities. All people do then is skim a few and look for the typo. What you really want to do is just highlight we're a global company, we're on 6 continents, and here's some of the offices. If I did this presentation for myself as opposed to a client, I wouldn't even have the city names on there. I would simply say, you can see we're on all 6 continents, mostly where people are living right now in terms of the greatest areas. So we do a lot in America, we do a lot on parts of China, for example, Beijing, Shanghai. We're focused there, Europe, etc. So you're focused on it, and that's what people want to know, that you are, but you're growing constantly as growing centers come. Sometimes the way to present information is through a diagram. Just as a picture is worth 1,000 words, the right diagram can be worth 10,000 words. This is a client of ours who for 9 years is working in a $1 trillion industry, working with hundred thousands of players in it, and trying to show that every time something new happens in the industry, it affects different elements in the industry. So you have here a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle. And each one of them means something to that group, so they can pull it out, something, let's say, CAD, and talk about how that's going to affect a group of people at a different level in terms of what they're doing. This picture was used for 9 years as a communication link between senior management. Using charts is another challenge for many people, and it's one that's worth taking a minute to understand. When you are comparing discrete information, what you want to do is you want to use a bar chart like the one on the left, 1, 2, 3. If, on the other hand, what you're trying to do is show a trend, use a line chart. And that helps you understand where it's going. Simple and easy. If you're focusing on an entity, 100% of our sales, what's the distribution of them? As you can see from the pie, which does that, the West is really where we dominate in our country. Company, 57% of all the sales we have are there. And just like before, I said sometimes you have to override what's in some of these charts. That's very important, especially with pies. So if I turned out that we're a 37-year-old company, but over the last few years, what we've done is we've expanded into the East Coast, never there before. And I want to make the point that we're now 15% of our business. Well, I can break it down as I did on the left and just show the different slices of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, etc. Or what I can do is redo that chart as I did on the right and use a stacked bar. And that stacked bar chart allows me to show where it is. But I'm making the point that for 37 years we've been around, and only 3 years now on the East Coast, and it's already 15% of our business. Finally, one of the things you might want to do is use graphics to make a point. Two ways of doing that. One is using familiar concepts. There are cartoons out there. There are drawings out there, Google images out there that allow you to make the point. This was a company that's in the network security business and came out as a brand new entrepreneurial company against an entrenched company. And without attacking the established company, it wanted to make the point that they're better. So what they did is they tried to use this concept of the big bad wolf being able to blow the house down if he's really strong and hard and does that, because their infrastructure would only have so much support, whereas obviously this company was strong like bricks and could handle it. Turns out in 1 year, using this kind of campaign, they went from a brand new company to the industry leader. There are icons, don't drink and drive, that you can just take and plug and put them together. Sometimes there are graphics that help you make a point. Not everybody wants the same thing. So maybe she's worried about the trash on the way down. I think he's got other things on his mind. Or maybe we say things and we act differently. So here he's saying he's relaxed and happy, but I don't get that when I watch him. Inconsistency is something we need to look at. And finally, every once in a while, no matter how hard you look, you can't find what you're looking for. And you've got to figure it out. So, for example, many years ago, I took groups of interns of mine to software expos, and we try to understand what this word integrated means, because everyone's offering an integrated solution. The problem was we knew a lot of people using what they called an integrated solution, but the pieces didn't fit together well. So how do you explain that to somebody? So we realized that Shelley, who wrote the book Frankenstein, probably got it. What she really said is, I can take an integrated body parts and put it together and create a person, but that person is called the Frankenstein monster. Similarly, when many people integrate their stuff, the things don't fit together as well as they should. They get it working, but it's not the way it would be if it were a holistic solution. And that's the way God wanted things to be. And so sometimes it makes sense to do it. It is really, if you think about it, in the software world, the difference between Microsoft with software and Dell and Compaq with hardware versus Apple, who integrated it into a whole solution, and today has its position in the market, it's ahead of everyone because it's a holistic solution that really works. So now we have them. Now we have to organize it for impact, because remember, the goal is making a decision. So you give people a roadmap. Tell them where they're going, like I did up front. You tell them where you're going, you tell them what they need to know, the content, and then you summarize it. You use transitions between the sections, and you conclude the takeaway points. So, for example, you might follow an industry standard. It might be built to a climax. It might be, this is what we've done in the past. When I work with sales companies, a typical one is get someone's attention. What's the problem? What's the challenge? Identify what the client really needs and focus on needs assessment. Then you want to show how you can satisfy those needs, and then get people to emotionally get into it by visualizing them, and then you ask them to take action. You can use transitions between these slides. I'm using word slides today. I love slides that are just visuals, like the chess piece for strategy. And sometimes you want to use animation. I'm not very big on animation, except when I'm building, as I just did in this case, to a crescendo. That's a good place to use it. The bad news is today every third grader is learning PowerPoint, and they think you're supposed to have each letter shoot in off the screen and bubble up in all kinds of crazy animations, which are a lot of fun, but not something you'd want to watch in a presentation. Ultimately, what all of us do is we do sales presentations. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, because this is just an idea to give you a sense of it, but you'll get it. All sales presentations should be client-centered. It's all about the client, not about you. What you do is you analyze their needs, and you explore the alternative solutions, because you're establishing there that you've looked at things you're rejecting, and that's your credibility. You then recommend the best value-added solution, which generally is the one you probably offer. You then offer a compelling reason to use you, and you show how other people who've used you have been successful, third-party testimonials, and then you close by asking for a commitment. To do it, you've got to do a lot of things. First is you've got to understand it's a company that's buying. What's the problem? What's been the business? How have they handled it in the future? In other words, from a company point of view, what's in it for us if we buy your solution to how to organize our company? or in this particular case, Kroger, if they're offering a money center where they're offering people the ability to buy gift cards. But remember, companies don't buy things. People buy things. So you always have to understand your buyer. What's motivating them? Are they looking for something today or tomorrow? Imagine you're a landscaper and you're selling to a person who's just going to build a mansion in a beautiful area, wants it to be the most impressive house in the neighborhood and last 1,000 years. Completely different pitch than if you're going to a developer who's trying to build a bunch of condos that he's just trying to unload, and people were going to go ahead and make the change to the landscaping anyhow. So you've got to figure out from that person's point of view, what are they really looking for? And then you guide the decision making, okay? State it logically, but address the emotions, pain, fear, and success. You should focus people on the value. We all talk about price being so important. The fact of the matter is nobody really buys on price. I'm sure none of the people who I'm listening to today are living in the absolute cheapest building they know of, wearing the absolute least expensive clothing they have, driving the absolute cheapest Yugo that they can find as a car, etc., etc. What we do is we want value. We want to minimize risk, but we want value. Why once upon a time when IBM was selling computers and then Compaq and then Dell came along, people would say, no, you still buy an IBM because no one ever goes wrong for buying it. And that was true until 1987 when the world changed and people found out, hey, there is something wrong with buying a computer that offers no extra benefits at a higher price. I've said this many times. Come back to it. It's all about doing your homework. You need to know who your clients are. You need to know about the facts. You need to know why they're doing what they're doing. And then only then can you start giving some potential solutions. Now, what you should always do when you're making a sales presentation is share your understanding of the problem. You could be off. You could be wrong. And if you are, then the person will understand it, explain it to you, help you focus yourself on the right solution, and that's it. Or if it's a one-way webinar, as I'm speaking with you right now, you'd say, well, you're kind of missing the point, but it's okay. You understood where I was coming from. Again, you not only give your solution, but you give the alternatives and evaluate their merits, and then you recommend yours, because remember, your competitor will probably offer something slightly different. And then what you want to do is make it compelling. Show it in its best light. Give it its best perspective when you're showing what the solutions are. And again, remember that value isn't always the lowest cost. You need to address it from that point of view. You need to try to help people understand not what does it cost, but what is its return on investment. For some of you, you know I'm a chair with Vistage International. I had just this morning someone heard some great things about Vistage, wanted to know if they could meet with me to maybe join our group, and he asked me the question of what it costs to join. And I said to him as we were talking, I told him about one client that's increasing sales by about $2 million this year, and another one of our members who actually has saved $120,000 in operating expenses. I said, so if you only paid 50% of that up front, would you still call that a good deal? And he goes, yeah, it's incremental, it's great. I said, well, good news is we don't cost that much, and that's the point. It's what's your return on investment? What would be fair? And so when I gave him the price, he said, that's dirt cheap. He got it, because one of our goals is within 6 months of joining Vistage, we make sure that you can say that you've achieved the entire year's tuition at the absolute minimum. You always want to, again, present your value, not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. How is your product better? How are you offering a synergy that's superior? How are you being able to do something? What are the relationships you might have that offer new opportunities for people? The point is, remember, it's not just what solution they're looking for, but it's making them feel comfortable that you are going to help them as the buyer and as the company. It's about the benefits. So, for example, if you're a hedge fund and you have a proprietary system, a secret source for running your program, you don't want to just talk about what your return rates are. You want to try and explain to them what makes you different, what makes you special, what's your unique system for doing what you're doing. Coors Beer did that in a very interesting way. It ran a campaign, I think it's a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, which said, we're the coldest beer. Now, what's fascinating is, if you think about it, cold is not an attribute of beer. Okay, cold is an attribute of how you serve beer, but it's not beer. Point is, people identified with it, and that helped boost sales. It was a good technique because it worked that way. So what you want to do is position yourself as being special and then showing that you're the ideal partner. Demonstrate your competence. Give experiences, case studies, testimonials. Show that you're an advisor. not just a supplier. It's not about the transactions. It's about the relationship. Whatever it takes to get something done, you will do. And that the benefits of using you greatly outweigh any potential risks. And then you want them to feel good that they're a client. Whoa, I'm one of the Fortune 500s who use this company. Okay? And you want to be able to give them the kind of basis that makes them feel positive, both from the logic and the emotion. I'm in the right club. Okay? And that's it. Groucho Marx used to have a phrase, any club that would want me as a member is a club I shouldn't be a member of. And that's the point. You want to be one in a good one, and you know that. And then what you want to always understand is whatever it is you do and say, you're not alone. Persons making decisions based on what I like to call invisible forces, other decision makers, attitudes they walked in toward your company. Oh, I used your company 20 years ago, and I had a real problem with it, so I'm not sure I want to use you now. Even though 20 years ago it was owned by a different owner in a different city, in a different state, doing different things. How do you overcome that? Who does the person come? The new CEO is looking. I have a CEO at a company in California, and he told the person in HR, call Jerry at Presentation Excellence to schedule some training for our people, because he had had the experience of working with us, and the person who was his assistant came with him, knew right away who to call, and we got the call from there. So what you want to do is take into account all the invisible forces. And finally, you want to be performance-oriented. What you really want to do is be able to give people benchmarks. So when you say, I give you a 30-day money-back guarantee, that's pretty safe, because that says if you don't like it, you can turn it back. It builds confidence. And that's the key point about everything we do in presentations. We're dealing in everything with the content, but also the attitudes toward it. It's both the logic and the emotion. So let me summarize again the organization point. You have to demonstrate your understanding of the client's needs. You assess potential solutions, why these things might work, including the ones you may not choose because they're inadequate, and then you make your evaluated recommendation, but this is the best answer. You establish your credibility and expertise. You've been doing this for the last 20 years, and you have a 99.99% rating from all your clients about how happy they are because they've saved money, improved lives, and have a better time right now. You then present the terms and conditions, and finally ask for the commitment. Closing a sale means asking for the commitment. Okay, congratulations. We now know what to say. We now know how to say it. Now what we have to do is say it. So how do we deliver a winning presentation? I like this graphic. Over the many years, we've been doing this for over 20 years now, helping people present. I like people to understand that ultimately we're a conductor. We have all of these resources in front of us, the information, the graphics, the setting of the audience, the context we're working with. We have to figure out a way to blend it together. And with that mental set, you're going to be a much more powerful presenter than you are if you just think of it as an individual doing it alone. First is be audience-driven. Again, this is why we call it ADAP, audience-driven authentic presentations. It's all about helping the audience see, feel, hear all the issues so that whatever parts of their brain are working. If you are doing a one-on-one or one-on-group presentation where you can watch the audience, watch their body language, see if they get it. I'm a teacher, and it's the key thing I use to be an effective teacher is to watch when people are getting tired and bored, or when people are bending forward trying to look for information, or if I see that look of puzzlement on their desk, means the example didn't drive home the point and I have to try it again. You always have to understand the context of your presentation. Again, presenting at 1:30 in the afternoon in a group where everyone's just had a heavy lunch means that group's going to be tired. That's just the nature of the room. So if you can get them to get up, walk around, do what you can, makes a big difference. I recently presented at Wall Street One-to-One, and I presented right after I was leading a panel on how to do investor presentations. I'm presenting right after lunch. The way it was set up is traditional these meetings. Everyone's around table, and then there's a podium in the front, and the panel was sitting there. And I realized there's about 30 feet between where we were sitting and the front of the people, and if I didn't keep them awake, they would probably start falling asleep. So I immediately moved my computer down from which I was going to control the presentation, and stood down and stood about 3 feet in front of the first table, walked in and out with the people. And by doing that, the relationship between myself and the group was there, and no one ever, got tired, etc., because they all knew we're working together. Okay? In essence, I had a conversation. I didn't just do this thing from the planet Gazubu, drop something on people called presentation. That's why we're scared of it. We think it's something that's not us. Great presentations are conversations. For those of you who think you're nervous about presentations, keep the following point in mind. You go to Thanksgiving dinner, you go to Christmas dinner, you're constantly with people and family and you're telling stories. And when Aunt Sally asks you what your new job is and how it's living with your new boyfriend or girlfriend and you're telling the story, you're presenting. Except we call it a conversation because you know that they're interested and you're having eye contact and you're keeping it going. That capability is what you bring into a professional presentation, and that makes you a winner. Now, you got to prepare for it. You need to know your stuff. You need to check the stuff. You have to look at it. Competence generates confidence. That's the key to success. You got to know your stuff and do it. I worked with a presenter who is kind of one rung below the CEO, aiming to move to that level. Did a number of very good presentations. One day I come in and he just told me about a town hall meeting he did, and I said, let's just take a few seconds, let me see how that one worked, because it wasn't one I worked on, and it was horrible. And he was presenting it terribly, and it ended by falling off a cliff, literally. And I looked at him and I said, you didn't present this, did you? You didn't design this and write it. You just read it and showed it, didn't you? And he looks at me sheepishly and said, yeah, I guess I wasn't an authentic presenter. I said, no, and you know what? That's going to hurt you. 6 months later, he left the company. Public speaking. Keep in mind what I told you in the very beginning. Everyone is nervous. So if you're nervous, you're like everyone else. Feel good about that. Second, if you forget to say something, don't worry about it. First of all, nobody knows. And second of all, you can bring it in later on. And third, if they want to, they'll ask you about it. So don't worry about it. None of us can remember everything. There's not a single time I've ever presented, whether it's a 10-minute presentation or a 6-hour presentation, that I've remembered everything. And I'll change the order in which I do it. The point is that it's coming from me with the passion and enthusiasm that you hear as I present to you today. You're talking to your audience. You're not reading slides. You're not looking at your handouts. Don't be captured by them. And always be loud enough so the person in the 40th row, in the back can hear you, because you never know who that person is. It could be the vice chairman. Speak dynamically. Keep it short, simple. Enunciate. Vary your tone, your pitch, your don't ever, ever be monotone. You want to be confident of what you have. But remember, competence leads to confidence. So you'll be confident if you know your stuff well. And be natural. And in our training programs, people get to practice doing presentations, and they do it in front of a group, and they learn a language, which is what I'm teaching you today, of how to judge people's excellent presentations, and then they use them to critique themselves and improve their presentations. No two people are the same. So there isn't a canned way of doing it. We've had a number of Secretary of States in this United States who are not born in America, who come in with very strong accents, like Henry Kissinger. But they stand naturally. They're relaxed, and they can move freely with what they do because they know that's them. You increase your comprehension by using, as I have today, statistics, stories, quotes, acronyms. The point is you use whatever tools help you communicate your stuff well. And one of the points that I try to drive home is, especially in a longer presentation, it's fine to repeat a point. Not everything. The key points, because that repetition is communicating that this is important and therefore you need to know it. And most important about language, stay away from large words. Keep it simple. I receive all the time people writing the word utilize. I don't know anyone in the real English uses it. We use things. Okay? Use simple English that people get. I have an advantage over most of you. I'm a lawyer and a psychologist. I spent 4 years learning one set of jargon, once the other 4, and I found out that whichever school I was in, I only had friends in that profession because everyone else couldn't understand the heck what I was saying because of the jargon. And then when I went to Capitol Hill, my congresswoman made a point to just speak English, Jerry. They'll get it all. And she was right, and that was my presentation lesson. Use precise words to make a point and keep things short, simple, and to the point. And remember that when you're speaking, you can't rest on your laurels based on the facts. You've got to make sure you're generating the emotions to get people in this. And never rest on it. What you're trying at all points to do is communicate a competent message and then build trust in the way you're delivering it, the tone, the structure. Everything you do builds trust so the person says, you know, I know it's a new company and they're going up against this gigantic established company, but you know what? I believe these guys are going to kill to get it right the first time, and if we have a problem, they'll be there to make sure that it's solved as fast as possible, and I'm willing to give them a chance because I trust them, and that's the key to sales. Some of you will be given difficult questions from time to time. Don't worry about it. There's really nothing that's difficult about it if you simplify it. So first, you've asked a question, I'll repeat the question so I stay in control. I then divide it up into the parts I know and the parts I don't know. What I know, I'll give you an answer to. What I don't know, I'll be honest and tell you that because that's authentic. You're going to buy my ability to say, I don't know the answer to that exactly. Can I get back to you tomorrow with an answer? And then do that. Always be polite, always be professional, but follow through. When you do that, then what happens is they accept everything you've said. Practice is very important. I don't recommend that what people do is write a speech, read the speech, and practice it because then they're memorizing it. What you're practicing is telling the story. So you write bullets. All my students, when they present, and they all have to present as part of my classes, are entitled to have one card in front of them with bullets on it, and that's all. They can write down the hard words they don't understand, key numbers, but that's it. It's all they can have on the card because what I want them to practice is communicating, conversations. And that allows them to channel that nervous energy into enthusiasm, and that's what's really critical. Some of you will not just present face-to-face. You'll also get involved with webinars, as I'm doing with you right now. Webinars are a phenomenal way of reaching audiences. Well, we've had audiences of 2,700 people internationally come to our presentations. What you want to do is be able to motivate sometimes to see more by giving them all the facts so that later on they'll schedule a meeting with the Vito that you're really trying to reach. So just a tip about it, everything I've told you about closing and delivering a powerful presentation works when you do a webinar as well. You can't use your body language to affect people. You can't dress for success to affect people. But what you can do is be clear in what you're doing. You can articulate your message properly. If you are like me, your voice gets, your throat goes sore. And I always start when somebody comes in, brings me another cup of coffee to keep my energy going, and I keep a cup of water here so that I'm constantly feeling comfortable when I'm doing it. But I'm not too comfortable. I have a special pillow that I use because of my back, and I turn it around most of the time when I present, so I'm a little uncomfortable giving me that little edge. You master your technology. A new program I'll tell you about in a minute does all of its presentations with WebEx. I like to use Citrix. Citrix go to meeting or go to webinar. Doesn't matter. Whichever one you're doing, just use it, know it, and feel comfortable with it. So putting all of this together, what do we know? We know the following, that a professional presenter who's capable of closing any deal is knowledgeable, focused, and organized. Using graphics, using visuals that have graphics that are important, that are engaging, that make sure the person gets the message both visually and in terms of dynamics, so it's emotional and logical. And what they're going to do is see the picture and hear you. You're not reading the words. You're pulling together the right brain and the left brain to get total brain power on what you're doing. You're presenting in a way that shows you're excited. You're poised, but you're excited. You're enthusiastic, and you're powerful about it. And you leverage your setting. Think about it. You're all sitting down at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 2 o'clock in the afternoon New York City time. For those of you on the East Coast, it's after lunch. You may be getting tired. If it's in California, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I've had to pull you away from what could have been a meeting. So what you need to do is make sure that you're communicating at the level they're going to get and be excited by it. And that's the final point. It's a story. That's really all we're doing is telling a great story with a point that we want to do. Just like Aesop told fables, it's the moral of the story we're trying to communicate, but you've got to show you enjoy it. Because your enjoyment, your passion for that shows through, and that's how the trust and confidence comes to sell what you're doing. Now, if you listen to me and you follow the instructions that I've given you, you'll be a hero. And I have to tell you, with Presentation Excellence, which has been around over a decade already, and Brilliant Image before that, we've worked with 5,000 plus, I've lost track at that point, people. That's what gets us up 24/7. I get up at 4 in the morning to work with a client when they're doing a presentation, and I want to go through exactly how do I make sure they're there. It's to make you a hero. That's what motivates us to want to work with you, so that you can close your deals faster, more efficiently, more powerfully, and move on to new heights so that you can achieve your career goals and improve lives, which is really what good presentations can help you do. And with that, I want to thank you. Presentation Excellence, it's a resource center for strategic leadership development and executive coaching services. We are now called the Presentation Excellence Group. Wait 2 weeks, and Presentation Excellence Group will come out introducing where all of our affiliates, including Presentation Excellence, are. Right now, you can go visit them. For those of you who've been tracking us, you know Webinar Excellence is our company that helps deliver these webinars. We will be archiving these presentations, and you'll be able to see them all on Webinar Excellence in about a week. For those of you who are CEOs and looking to join a group that is very powerful to help you grow your company and grow yourself, that's Vistage International. If you're in New York, it's Vistage New York. One of the things I'm very excited about now is a company called Eval2Win, or Evaluate2Win is the parent company. We're just a consultant on them. It's something Jack Welch has called the best business management system I've ever seen. It's a great way to drive employees and management to achieve the culture of leadership that you're really trying to do. The inventor of this program, it's incredible. He's been growing his company using this technology at a 20% clip for the last 5 years. At any rate, with that, we want to thank you for joining us today.